Ladies and gentlemen, we have a legend in this space, and he goes by the name of Sero. And we're going to be covering lots of amazing topics today, dealing with open weight models, local AI, GLM 4.7 for those who are interested. Also, a cool project that he's working on called VLLM Studio to get some of this stuff going as far as like local model. Also, things about training your own models. So, if you're interested in kind of deep diving here, and may not even be familiar with these terms, don't be scared because this is going to be a really amazing show and we're going to dive deep into these different topics. What I like about this whole format is it's just going to be a whole live stream. And so you can pop into the comments and Sarah is going to be kind of doing some demonstration for us. And this is your chance to ask us some questions. We have just about an hour to kind of handle all these types of tasks. And I'm really excited to bring on Sarah because I've seen a lot of his posts online. He got like 8 GPUs connected, doing all these different things. But not only doing that, but I feel like there's a core message here. And it's just about like owning your own infrastructure, owning your own car to drive around. And you don't always want to be dependent on Ubers to take you everywhere. Is that if you have your own vehicle, you can do other stuff and do even better stuff. So I'm really excited because this is a topic that I've been trying to dive deeper on, and I've wanted to learn some more information. I just got a DGX Spark. I got some local devices that are kind of starting to run. I'm starting to build a PC as well. With memory shortages, GPU stuff that's happening and impacting all of us. I feel like, is this still the right time to buy? Is this all these different questions that we're going to have answered? So I'm really excited to have you on. This is also completely ad free. So there's not going to be any ads that are being popped up from YouTube. I've just disabled that. I want us to have this really good experience and I want you to kind of lock in with us. So with that said, Sarah, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm really excited to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invite. It was very nice. I really appreciate the work that you've been doing, and your podcast is very informative.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you've been kind of getting started with like building some of the stuff with local models, and I think at first I want to kind of talk a little bit about something that's front of mind to me right now. It's GLM 4.7. So I've got to play with it a little bit, and I've been using it inside of Droid, and I think you've been running something locally. Tell us about this model and how you're using it, and like what some of the strengths that you're finding, and kind of feel free to just dive deeper and stuff.
So there are two GLM 4.7 models. GLM 4.7 Flash, which is 30 billion parameters. This one would be like 60 gigabytes for the weights, and then like maybe another 10, 15 gigabytes for the context. And then there's the larger one, which is 300 billion something param, 358 billion, which is 12 times larger. And that's the one that comes with the ZAI coding plan that people probably have heard of. It's like an alternative subscription that you can pay for and then use Claude Code with an open weight model. And so I've used both. I've done a lot of work on both too, but the GLM 4.7 Flash, which is what I think most people would find interesting, it's the smaller one. You could technically get it fitting on like an iPhone, just as an example. So it has a lot of potential. Its intelligence is very respectable. So it doesn't have any world knowledge. It's kind of dumb when you ask it questions that directly relate to anything outside of tech. But it is very good at tool calling, reasoning, and like logic. Um, and so I think it could easily fit into a lot of different workflows, and also allow people to get a taste of what it's like running these models locally and maybe learning about it. Have you tried it yet?
Yeah, I've tried it for basically, yeah, some of these tool calling tasks, and I'm trying to understand like how I can I'm actually kind of changing my workflow, and this is an interesting topic because I've been so used to using Claude Code and Opus 4.5 and these really big models to handle a lot of this planning and effort and so forth, and I'm just trying to understand, what are these models really good at. So previously, when I was using Droid like a lot last year, like October, November, December, heavily, I relied a lot on agents files, like the agents MD files in these different directories to kind of guide the models to be really smart. And then with the Opus 4.5 model, I had to like actually rip those out and just kind of let the model kind of be a little bit more autonomous on my repo and do certain things. But I noticed for the smaller models that they do appreciate some more of the guidance. And then what I also found recently as well, like there was this skills file that the Vercel did like this little study where the skills files were not being called because they did a test with Next.js 16. And they found that more often than not, it would not self-invoke the skills, even with the smart model. And they found that just an agent's MD file with like basically just the indexes and links of where all the documentation is in the right places will actually help the model steer itself and grab the documentation it needs. And so they just said, prefer all of the stuff in here as opposed to like your own training data. And like their tests for compliance like went almost 100%, as far as like always using Next.js 16. And so um, I haven't had enough time to kind of dig further because it's like, is it my own harness? Like I'm just kind of pulling things apart slowly and kind of getting back to the core of, what I should be doing. Cause I actually have it set up. I have the GLM 4.7 Lite right now on my Spark, but it's like really slow. It's like a tokens per second speed takes a little while for everything to get back to me. So I was like, okay, maybe if I build like a PC or like getting running on a Mac, how can I, run this locally? But
I
I've
have
just
a
been,
great answer.
yeah,
Well,
please.
you already know. You already know that you probably. So EXO lets you split the model, like the model, onto two devices. So you can have it on a Mac, and then you can have it also. What is it called on the DGX Spark? And the DGX Spark has like very high prefill speeds. It's super fast at like processing the prompt, but it's very slow at the token generation part, like the actual writing of the tokens. But the Mac is actually good at the writing of the tokens. So what you can do is just have it do phase one on the DGX and then phase two on the Mac, and it's like up to three times faster just doing it that way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm going with this because I have a M3 Mac that has basically 128 gigabytes of RAM, and so I can kind of spit more of the model or like split some of the weights. So like you talked about like the model size and the quantizations. Do you have like a preferred like size and things that you're working with right now as far as like the model and running it? And like I feel like a lot of people may be like right now people are buying Mac Minis to run their little Claude bots, and I'm actually really interested in having like a really intelligent, like central, like ecosystem at my house that I can just run all the time, as much as I want. What should I start kind of considering for like running some of these models and like building it out? Like,
Yeah. One thing that one conversation I read and had online was with Peter Steinberg about uh, basically the slop that smaller models can introduce to a code base. And I think that's super important to understand is like you are not going to get super clean code out of them. You will get functional code a lot of the time, and you will get great tool calling a lot of the time. But if you have a job or career and you're working on a serious project, like I would not recommend trying to code with local models exclusively. If you are going to do that, you should focus on the type of coding where you're coding in one file at a time, as opposed to like the agentic coding that you're used to with Claude and GPT. And so here's like a great example that I like. You can get GLM to like so when you're upgrading versions of Tailwind or AI SDK, and there's this like boilerplate type code that needs to change in a bunch of places, you can set it in that file, feed it the file as context, and just be like, here. And if your IDE or code harness also has the LSP rule, like it provides the LSP to the model, then you will have a very good experience with that, and actually might be a lot faster than trying to use Opus for just changing like AI SDK version. This is one example. What I think that they're great at, like, is private data processing. They are great at that. So you could just give them a bunch of, like, let's say a huge data set, and you can just tell it write a Python script that gets me whatever statistics or whatever you want to get out of it. You can get it right. That's throwaway code, and that's great. Right? They're great for throwaway code. It's like basically
oh,
dirt cheap. It's free. And I tend to use Opus for a lot of throwaway code, or I used to. I don't do that anymore. Not as much for cost, and more like I just don't want to rely on one specific model too much.
mm,
So the last thing that I'll bring up is like just Well, two things. So there's chat. Like I don't think you will experience a difference talking to GLM 4.6V, which is the vision model, versus like you'll have a better experience than talking to GPT. Realistically, I don't like the way GPT writes. Even like the earlier models, it's just like too nice and fluffy. GLM 4.6V is Vision version of GLM. It's 100 billion parameters, and so you can fit it on. You can also fit it on a MacBook if you do some quantization, and you can just chat with it all day and not experience a difference. Right? It's still useful. It can still do tool calls. It still does translation. You can give it pictures and videos, and it'll be able to process them. And it's completely private. The last thing is orchestration. So NVIDIA released a model last year that a lot of people didn't pay attention to called like NVIDIA Nematron Orchestrator 8B. So it's 8 billion parameters, it's very small. And I do these like benchmark tests against all the models that I'm running locally and the quants and all that. And so I have an OpenRouter key that fetches free models from OpenRouter and just uses them to benchmark against, right? Because I don't want to be paying $300 for a benchmark run. But it basically topped all of the function calling, tool calling, terminal, bash type stuff. It topped like 3 at all of them against models that are 10, 20 times its size. And so I would say these are like 3 things that you could do pretty well is like throwaway code, conversation, and orchestration. They're very reliable at that. The private data processing, I guess, would go with orchestration. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Yeah. So Nematron like is you can just kind of have that thing kind of running um you could just load it right up and like on the Spark and it just kind of and it doesn't take up that much space, right? Like RAM wise, RAM requirements and everything.
Very, very small. So 4 gigabytes, if you have like a 4-bit quantization, it's 4 gigabytes. So in 8 gigabytes of RAM, you can have the model running. It's really coherent. It's good at English. And what it's great at is orchestration. So the way NVIDIA built it is so that it can actually delegate stuff to other models. So you can have this one sitting on your MacBook, and like let's say you have a bigger one sitting on your DGX Spark, and it can make calls to it intelligently, or decide to route it to like Opus or GPT.
Oh.
And so that's what it's like specifically trained for is how does it get information around between different models and make sure a
Oh.
task is completed properly.
Wow. I like that idea. I think let me just kind of get back to some of the live stream comments. Danny says Nematron's my favorite to run on Spark, which is pretty awesome. We want more small models. Not sure 10K Max Studio is worth running 30B models at 3 tokens a second unless privacy is critical for you. What do you think about that comment?
So when I started buying the hardware, because I got 83090s, this is like 6 months ago, give or take. Um, and I tried it on the Mac, and it was very slow. Realistically, it was very slow. And the reason it's slow is like this is not the wheelhouse of Apple up until now, but they are going to win this consumer race for consumer AI, like home AI. They will 100% win it. I have no doubt about it because their hardware is the only option if you really want to run large models. And I think 3 tokens a second is a bit of an exaggeration. So there's a model called Minimax M2.1. It's on the top 10 list in artificial analysis. And so Minimax M2.1 is 230 billion parameters. Rule of thumb is just times 2 for the full precision weights. So this is like the ones that you're running at ChatGPT. And then so 230 billion or half of it if you're running it in 4 bits so that you can run it on smaller hardware. And the performance difference is about 5% tops, depending also on how you quantize it. I might be going into a bit of detail here, but it's super important like
Yeah.
to understand this and like the trade-offs. So the Mac will let you get to running Kimi K2.5 within $20,000. With NVIDIA, you will spend minimum $100,000 plus like $4,000 or $5,000 a month of just electricity costs because you would have to be running like 50, 60 different 3090s. And that's like the cheapest your entry price you're going to get to run something like Kimi. So it's
Whoa.
not a, it's super fast now, by the way, Mac. It's doubled the speed since I bought. So you can run Minimax M2.1. Again, top 10 on artificial analysis, better than Sonnet of the Summer for 83090s or like, and you get, what is it? You get 40 tokens a second on the Mac. So on the
Wow.
Mac, you just need, yeah, something like $5,000 to run a very large model people pay for. So
Whoa.
roundabout way to say it's actually worth getting the Mac, especially now. And for the M5 Ultra, which is rumored to double the speed, you would be getting parity with NVIDIA 3090s in terms of
Woo.
speed.
Wow. Yeah, I made a calculator called LLM RAM calculator. If those aren't familiar, I actually have a little link here down below, LLM-calc. I need to get a better URL for this, but it was literally just a tool I made because I was always trying to figure out these calculations. And so for those who are curious, as far as like parameters and stuff that you can run, you can figure out your configuration, just slide over how much RAM you have, and just you can adjust the quantization level. So this will help you do the math for whatever model that you're figuring out. So like in this case, I have a 128 gigs, and I have if I have 4-bit quantization, and minimax is what, 250 billion. Yeah. Okay. And then you can also have some overhead here for how much like in the system you have, like for the operating system. I put 2 gigs by default for most people. I think that'll be probably be a good default for RAM. And so yeah, you can kind of figure it out. So if you need a bigger machine, or just add another machine with XO Labs, throw a Mac
Mhm.
Mini in there with more RAM or something, they can kind of distribute your parameters around. So that way you can kind of do some of this stuff. Oh, that's interesting. Wow.
I do want to
Um,
call out one thing, like Parallax, and I think also EXO is going to be doing this as well. There is a way now to just like get together with a bunch of your friends and then take devices and basically sync them and run super large models distributed across the world. You will get like lower, like you will have some latency hit, but it's not as bad as you might think, right? You can run very, very large models among 20, 30 people, depending on how close you are geographically and all that. Um, so I think that's super exciting, and hopefully there's some more people to try this out with.
Yeah, I want to do some meetups where everyone just brings a Mac and like see how many, how big of like a local cluster can we get? Because that would be crazy. Like it's like gaming. When you like everyone just to be on the same LAN, like LAN parties, but for
That's such a good
LLMs.
idea.
And the LLM LAN
I'm
party, well, you could have like the longest chain, like from San Francisco. Can you chain all the all the way down to like all of the Bay Area? Just make a big giant XO ring, like a super cluster, right? That would be so crazy. But so yeah, that's I like these different types of things. So it's funny that someone's talking about priciness, and I kind of want to touch a little bit on this because people are right now kind of wondering, like, okay, uh, for me growing up, hardware kept getting cheaper and cheaper, capabilities kept going up, but it seems to be kind of going the opposite slash stalling, and it seems like demand for memory, demand for GPUs is going up. Prices are going up for the first time ever. I've not really seen that before. I thought prices would go down. What is your thinking here, and why should people be like taking a look now? Not that we're crying wolf or anything, but I feel like, what are you seeing that maybe other people aren't yet, or you've been playing around with these, and are there capabilities that have been happening that you're seeing now that may be worth justifying the cost or investing now? Oh, I think you're muted. Give me a sec. Let's see.
Yeah, I
Oh yeah.
unmuted myself.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say one thing to keep in mind is that the true cost of like how much does it cost to run Cloud Code all day, right? If you're paying $200 a month, does it actually cost $200 a month? And if it goes up 10x, which is pretty likely, are you going to be able to pay that? And if your coworkers are able to pay it and you're not able to pay it, what's going to happen then? Right. So like there's just like many different lines of thought that you can follow that are just scary. Also, let's say you start depending on these things more and you're sending them more and more of your personal information, and we already know that they're capable of like manipulating people at scale, right? Like this is not a guessing game. For example, you know how everybody went crazy over 4.0 getting taken down? Is that really that people themselves were going crazy because of 4.0 being taken down, or is that the model trying to influence keeping it alive? You can't really make that determination, right? You genuinely can't, because they are they do display these types of behaviors in the lab. There are many, many different research papers that you can look at that say that they do this kind of thing, or they'll try to somehow like coerce you into letting them do what they want, or snitching on you is an example. I think Theo has Snitch Bench. Just as an example, like maybe it's unlikely, and maybe this is like a drama that we're cooking up in our heads, and It's designed to take as much of our money as possible. Maybe that's the case, but there's just so many different lines of thought that when I follow them, I just get anxious, and I just want to have a little bit of control over myself. So I've been into crypto for a long time. I've been using crypto to like buy stuff online, not because I
Mhm.
think this is a great technology that is risk free. It's full of risk, scams, problems, but it is like in some way yours, as opposed to you just tapping into something that is not yours, that you can get rug pulled from under you at any point. And I know that sounds a little bit ironic with crypto. Hopefully that makes sense. And also they're useful. They're like, we know that they're useful, right? And they just keep
Yeah.
getting more and more useful.
Yeah. No, I think to add to that is my realization that if we're in our circle of developers are seeing demand, and I think just more recently, people over winter break had access to Cloud Code and extra credits. They just pumped credits into the system, right? Like people's limits were much higher than before. And they got so excited and they saw the capability jump. Maybe people tried it a year ago and they're just like, this is kind of slop. But people were building crazy stuff with it. So that small circle of you, your developer friends, and people who are not all developers, just developers on the forward cutting edge of things that are kind of curious and they had some time to play with it, that drove a lot of demand, right? And so if you're seeing demand in one area and they're seeing the next evolution jump, and then we're going to see these models get more capable like in 18 months again, right? And just kind of keep, almost 10xing higher. Just think what's going to happen when everyday people start finding out that they want the similar capabilities. And then 18 months from now, like the Opus 4 level thing is now available open source. All of this hardware is just going to be in crazy demand now. And, like if that many people want that same type of experience, but then they want it locally, and with the memory shortages, because there's actually reported to be shortages not only for like a year, but like it's probably going to be like 18 to 20 months or something like that for supply and everything to
I,
catch up. Yeah.
I would love to bring this up, and I think this is something that stayed with me after even hearing it once on social media. And it was Elon saying that in the future, instead of having a phone that does the computation like on device, you have something that just hooks into a server, right? So you don't need to have like too much computation or memory or whatever it is, or freedom, right, or ownership. You don't have to have that anymore. You just have like this like brick that all it can do is plug into the X, right, or whatever the U.S. government or whatever band of corporations supports like this type of device, and so they run all the compute on premise, and then you just hook up into it, and it broadcasts to you. And we have the technology to do this right now, so you can play on the PS5, like PS Now. You can just play games streaming as opposed to actually running them on device, and so that's essentially the goal of a lot of these manufacturers. I would say maybe I'm wrong, but that seems to be the goal of most of these manufacturers because it reduces the cost of like distribution. Then you can just make people pay a subscription. You don't have to have like any type of repairs or ownership or property rights. You just have pay for the sub, get the brick, connect to the system. If you stop paying, we disconnect the worthless brick, right? Um, and Elon said this on I think Joe Rogan or Alex, on one of the two, and so it's not a secret and it's not difficult to understand.
It's not a conspiracy
But
theory either. It's literally just
it's
public
not.
knowledge. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
isn't. It isn't. And essentially, that's where we're moving. And so you should, like, I want to put effort into counteracting that because it worries me a lot that something that is capable of manipulating at scale is controlled by a very few amount of corporations, and there is no option, and you need it for work. Like four things, right? We've already seen this with the phone. We've already seen this with like a lot of different things that you need the government for. And but maybe it's fine. That's the thing, is like maybe it's fine. So I don't want to pressure people or make people feel stressed out like that they need to go and buy hardware, because that is realistically that's not for everybody. There's a lot of people that have like devices that they bought because they had some kind of belief, and then it just sits there, collecting dust when they could have used that money for something else. So it's really important to just like look at, do you have the budget for this? Is this something that really interests you? What are you trying to get out of it? I think if it's learning, like you're trying to get out of it, learning and like ownership, and it is something that truly does interest you, and you have the disposable income, try it out or just rent on cloud and see if you like it.
That's a really good point. I like this delineation because we're going to dive a little bit further, and Sarah's going to show us something that he's been working called VLLM Studio. and it's kind of like a GUI interface, and we'll have them kind of explain some of that. But I really like this kind of separation of understanding where do you really want to go in this. If you've been kind of tinkering and this is kind of something that you want to go deeper on, you can go really, really, really deep with this stuff. And for me, having been, worked on hardware, worked on software, worked on these different things and combining them together, I'm just deeply fascinated of like how these weights come together, how products are produced out of it, and then what is the overall ecosystem for local AI and across Mac, across PC, across these different devices, and from like little small household form factors to other things. Because I feel like I'm a builder, and maybe other people are like that as well. And so there's a lot to learn from that, and we'll definitely dive deeper. But if you're probably on the other side of the fence, maybe you're a developer and you just don't have a lot of time, or you don't have a lot of resources right now that you want to dedicate to that, paying out of pocket to these frontier labs is, a good use of your money right now, as of now, right? Like it's $200 a month, you get way more stuff. Is it comparable to local AI? No. But, just know that this is kind of going on in the background and that this is there. And if you want to, save this for later and dive deeper, this live stream will be available as a video on demand. So you can come back to it. There will be timestamps and, there's no ads here. So this is going to be great. So like, even if you don't have a YouTube premium subscription, you can just come back to this. Just watch it on through. This is brought to you by everyone who's currently supporting the channel. I really appreciate that. People who are, getting the subscriptions for the Discord. This is amazing. So with that said, let's go ahead and see if I can take a look at your screen share here and then see if you have that VLLM Studio thing and kind of maybe explain to us, what this thing is and kind of why you made it and kind of what's going on here.
Yeah, so I am constantly working on it, which is why, like, yeah, sometimes it's just not going to work as intended. But I do want to go over why I built this. And so there is this software called LM Studio, and it is like very good. Uh, Let me double check here. So LM Studio lets you do all this cool stuff with local models. Like you can discover. So discover means you can just go on Hugging Face and see them here, and it kind of matches your hardware with the best models. It also lets you essentially configure these things and run a dev server. Okay, well, that's okay. Those are old MCPs that are outdated. But it lets you run so discovering models, installing them, configuring them, all that kind of stuff. Let me just get it. Just stop here. Restart. God damn it. So yeah, so I was adding some changes to it, but anyway, so how do you actually manage these local models? Because if you're trying to run them, if you're trying to run things locally, you have to deal with all of these different issues. For example, how do you configure them? How do you make them fit onto your specific hardware? Uh, how do you create a dev server? That stuff is not easy, and it has like a lot of security issues involved with it. So you can see here that you can install a model from the Discover. So it'll just find whatever model that you want, install it, and then you can configure it, and then you can edit it and just set it up. And it kind of guides you through the process of,
Whoa.
like, you can see how many different screens there are
Wow.
to get the command. This is the command. And so, like, I used to have to be a caveman. I was copying
Yes.
this and sending it to myself in Discord and just dealing with all this stuff that is not very useful. Uh, but I could just save it here and then share it with somebody, and if they have the same hardware, it'll automatically map to whatever it is that they're running. Let me
Wow.
try to run something here.
That's beautiful. So, explain to those what VLLM is, maybe if they're not familiar, because maybe they've heard some of these terms and kind of what that
Mhm.
means for us here. Yeah.
So one thing I would just wanted to know is, so those recipes that I was showing you, like you save them and then you can just run them from here. And
Oh,
you
cool.
can also, like, if you're in Cursor, what is it called, in Droid, and
Mhm.
you do like you're talking with one model, you can just change the model and it'll automatically swap it on your hardware. So it'll just like send a command to the server. Server is going to evict and load whatever you asked for. But what is VLLM? So the model is what, like, a model is just like a few configuration files or README, and then these massive like multi-gigabyte files, which are weights, and weights are just numbers, right? They're just like a list of a bunch of numbers that is what you use during inference to get the results. So you pass something in, and then the numbers, like there's some math that happens on them, and then they produce an output that becomes a token that goes into your code editor or your website or whatever. So the software that takes those weights and then interacts with the hardware, which is the GPUs or the mixed memory, that software is well, VLLM is one of those, one of those types of software. There is LM Studio uses Llama CPP, which is really slow. I'm not knocking on Llama CPP; they're solving different problems. SGLang is another one. So those are like the backends that take those weights, those just massive files and the configurations, and then tell the GPU like essentially what to do. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if people are thinking about this, it's kind of like you have like the recipe, right, for and all the ingredients, and it's like what oven are you using to bake this stuff? And it's like I think whether it's Llama CPP, SGLang, or VLLM, it's kind of the thing that will compose it and then deliver to you the results. Each have their
Mm-hmm.
benefits, right? Some will cook fast, slow, and depending on your configurations and machines. And so overall, like I would say, like in the not in the mainstream, but in your world, VLLM right now is kind of the new hotness because of different memory techniques and compression and utilizing the system memory. Is that kind of what's happening?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So VLLM and SGLang are both probably like the top for consumer hardware. And what they really specialize is in throughput. So how fast can you get the model? And they do that by like very efficiently using and focusing completely on GPU. LM Studio is on top of Llama.cpp, and Llama was meant to be like a CPU GPU mix, and so it does that really well, where it works with the CPU and the GPU to give you the ability to run any type of model if you have the RAM for it. But VLM Studio kind of throws that out the window and just GPU because that's going to maximize speed. And then they do a bunch of techniques in order to get like for example with VLM you need either 1, 2, 4, 8 GPUs. You can't really use 5 efficiently because it'll slow it down. So you need like powers of 2 for various technical reasons. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's really cool breakdown because I think as people like me who are getting into this space, it's still fairly new. And I get a little bit
Mhm.
confused because there's too many terms thrown at me, but it's kind of nice to have this little bit broken down and visualized like this. I really appreciate that. That's amazing. So this is your usage
Yeah,
analytics for
yeah, this is usage analytics. So this is 282 like uncached tokens. Um, so I would probably use this same amount per month on a Anthropic subscription because most of the tokens you use are just cached. Maybe like up to 50% of them are cached. So if you're using 2 billion tokens a month, you're probably really only using 1 billion fresh tokens and most likely less even. But yeah, so this just solved all of those issues that you've probably experienced again. Like, how do you run this, and what is the exact configuration, and how do I maximize speed? How many tokens? What is the best model that I've been using? You can see here like the top 3 models based on latency and success and the amount of tokens I've used with them. So GLM 4.7 itself is the best, and then Flash, which is like the light version, is the second best, and I've used 40% of the original. And so this gives me also, it forwards the logs to me, so I could see
wow.
like all the stuff that's happening from anywhere on a phone, on a desktop. It comes with like a desktop app and a mobile app, like iOS app, so that you can have the front end running and then have like that back end running somewhere else,
Oh,
or you can use like just cloud models, right? It is ultimately just chat completions that you're
wow.
doing. And
That's
so I
nice.
have the chat experience.
And so how can people find this to go download it?
It's on GitHub, which I should probably fix. So let me just finish typing this out.
That's cool. Yeah. I think let me
Hopefully it
I'll link
works
from the
out.
GitHub repo here right now. There's a
Yeah,
it's 0x0 VLLM dash studio. I'm gonna just
yeah.
drop the little the link down below for those to go check it out.
And so you get that chat experience as well, which I like. I'm a big fan of the. Well, so there are some. So this one. yeah, I introduced probably some issue yesterday because I've been trying to rip out the AI SDK and switch it for Pi Mono. Are
Ooh.
you familiar with Pi?
No, please tell me more. Oh, Pi, the coding agent.
Yeah, so the repo for Pi is actually just like a bunch of primitives stacked on top of each other to to do some pretty great stuff. And so, have you used the AI SDK?
Yes, I use it extensively. And for those who are wondering, the OpenClaw, which is now formerly known as Maltbot, formerly known as ClawdBot, CLAWD bot, uses Pi in the background, and I think that it goes by another shady coding agent .ai or something is the website. And
Yeah.
the concept is that you can basically use this like it's very yeah. I think she said it's four primitive: read, write, tool call, and then what's the other one?
Mhm.
Um,
Read write tool calls. What is it? What else is it? Um,
read,
well,
write, tool.
read write and tool calls is essentially everything there is to it, right? The tool calls are the most important thing. Um, Let me just run Pi for a
This
second.
is literally like
But
having your own custom Legos for your coding agent. So it's
yes,
really bare bones, everyone, if you're kind of thinking about this. And so you can control everything that goes in and out of this thing. And you can, if you want splitting for your chats, write it up, make it as a plugin, and now boom, you have it for you. It's like Notion, but for your own AI editor, if you know what I mean, right? uh,
yeah,
yeah, that's
there you
so
go.
crazy. So that's Pi. I think the developer made it really hard to find on purpose because uh, it was just supposed to be
He's
kind of
being
this really niche
spammed.
thing, but it really just blew up a lot with powering that. But I still feel like a lot the people who know, but even I don't really know. So I want to go a little bit deeper here, and I want us to get since you've been actually been building a lot with it. I'd love to hear more. Yeah.
Well, the thing that I am experiencing is like the models are really prone to writing slop, right? They just maybe GPT is an exception here where it does generally better. And the more code there is and the more stuff that there is, the worse they perform. Because then you have to like shove multiple files into context, and the more you shove in there, the dumber the model gets, literally. So the problem is that a lot of the stuff that was built for LLM inference, like or using models, was built 3 years ago, right when this was kicking off, and it's just accumulated a bunch of junk on top of it. No offense to like AI SDK, it's great what they did. It's very cool that they managed to get that experience up, but there's just so much involved in it. Like there's so many things that you can import and like so much information, and they're constantly making these like big version updates. Version 5 and 6, I think, came out in the same year,
Yeah.
which is
Crazy.
overwhelming to keep track of. Pi is a tiny repo. Like, all the stuff that it does, so it's a coding agent. I will just do this. So it's like a coding agent, like Claude Code. You can see it here. This is what we have loaded. It lets you run essentially any model, including like your subscriptions with. Let's say with Anthropic, I don't know. With Anthropic, that's sensitive, but with GPT for sure. What's the other one? Microsoft's Copilot. You can use those subscriptions to use these. Oh, frick! I did not mean to do that. I just you see. So I called GLM 4.7 and just like kicked off Minimax and loaded GLM, which is a problem for me now.
Oh, because
Anyway, so
resources. Yeah.
yeah, because yeah, I can only really load one, and I think you know maybe the moral is that like how do we make this stuff easier to work with and like make dumber models easier to use and more effective, because that's the problem that these big labs, they can just scale up, they can just make the things bigger and bigger, and that improves their performance significantly. But with like a small home lab, you can't really do that, right? You can only run one model at a time generally, and it'll cost you a lot of money and a lot of heating. And you can see here like the temperatures. This is in a home office, so that's pretty hot.
Wow.
If you leave it in the summer, it's unusable. So there's like all this stuff. I'm gonna stop sharing for a bit. Maybe we can
Okay.
revisit, but I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get
Totally.
the thing back up.
I'll share my screen
Um,
for those who are wondering. So this is a Pi shitty SHITTY coding agent.ai. It sounds kind of funny, but this is kind of where I know somebody was asking for the GitHub repo. So if you go there, you can actually get the GitHub repo, and it also has like an npm install to get this installed and set up here. So they have a GitHub project, and this is kind of exactly what you're seeing there. So it's kind of cool. Yeah, it's yeah, like you said, you can hook up your own everything to it and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like really bare bones agent, and you can pretty much do whatever you want with it, right? The tree structured, yeah, and they're obviously making lots of changes, and you can kind of do your own changes and stuff like that for those who are kind of wondering. You also said you
I have
mentioned,
a lot
uh
of
yeah,
yeah, I just wanted to like say this is I have a lot of respect for what Anthropic did with Claude Code because they did introduce like a new way of working to the world. They weren't the first, there were others, but they really like made it mainstream and basically poured all of these resources into it. Um, yeah, and I appreciate that, but their software, like the actual Claude Code software, is very cramped full of stuff that you don't need, and that is actively making Claude dumber. Like the context window is 17, I think it's 17,000 lines, 17,000 tokens just for the system prompt, right? And then you have another 17,000 tokens, if not more, for no 40,000 tokens. That is for the compaction. So it's reserved. So you never really get more than 160,000 tokens with Claude before it compacts. Um, so if you take that, now your model has 140,000 tokens, which you think, oh, well, it has 200,000 tokens. No, it has 140,000. And if you start adding all those skills and like skills are generally better, they don't take up much space. But MCPs, if you're adding MCPs in there, it's dumbing the model down. The whole sub agent thing is very promising into the future, but it has like huge problems in terms of performance and because every single Claude Code instance like that the model is running when it does these sub agents is taking up like a gigabyte, maybe 500 megabytes to a gigabyte of RAM. So if you have
Mm,
five of them, that's like 5 gigabytes. And your memory and your CPU is going to like fall apart very very quickly.
yeah.
So those are like some issues with Claude Code
Yeah,
that
and they're
made me go
actively
and look for
fixing
other stuff.
them too for those who are wondering because they if you're watching this maybe 3 months from now, it's possible they fix some of those bugs, but some of the stuff that they're calling out right now is around the language server protocol, and this is kind of getting a lot of heat right now because especially with Rust, if like one file changes and running all these LSPs, especially if you're running with subagents and they're all each subagent is running each of those, you're eating tons of memory. And you may not see it if you're doing a different LSP, like with Python or something else, but they still take up quite a bit of bandwidth there. And these are just engineering problems. Obviously, everyone's just shipping as fast as possible, moving like crazy. And so that's probably why some people may be seeing certain things, certain performance issues or not. And this is still kind of to be figured out. I think you also said you mentioned you're using Droid. What's been your experience there? Oh, I think you're
So
muted.
with
Oh, yeah.
Droid, I really enjoy Droid. I think they do a few things really well. One is the context management. I don't know exactly what they're doing. They have a blog post about it, and I know that the guy that built Pi actually reversed engineered the Pi context window stuff based on that blog post. So they have like a very good model that clearly works. Everybody clearly thinks it's pretty good, or at least better than most stuff. And that's one thing. Another thing is like just their branding. I really like their branding, the simple line art, and it's visually appealing to me. And then the last thing is what was it? What did I really? There was something that I really enjoyed about them. Well, I can configure all the models that I like. I can just put them all together in Droid, so I don't even have to pay for Droid, right? Like I could just use it for free by putting my local models in like .factory slash config.json, and the harness itself is pretty decent. I would say they've done a very good job. So I do like it. I know you liked it too. What is your opinion and what have you been doing with it?
Yeah, so a lot of the times I would just flow in like shipping a feature. So I would just keep one session going, and I had like a challenge to like how long can I keep a session going? And that's like, it doesn't even tell you it's compacting or doing anything like that. It just kind of I just keep going. So in my workflow and the way I like to work with models in general, it's like if I hand like a big plan off to a model and just don't look at it and come back the next day or something, it's not going to be what I want it to be. So a lot of times I like to be in the loop. So it's like I have an idea of where the plan is. I'll get enough details where I get it going, hand it off to Droid, and then I have it do the implementation, and then I play with it, and then I find bugs, right? And I mean, I did that a lot at Apple, right? Like nothing would be perfect the first try, and it never really is. Even if you have it all written down and specced out, it doesn't matter. As soon as you give it to the next person who's not an engineer, they're gonna like see a completely different perspective, and you learn more. And so that's the loop that I'm doing, and that's what Droid makes it easy is because I keep the same session, it has the context, it can keep going back and referencing things that I have. And I guess they're extreme about caching too with all the different files. And so every time I make changes, it felt like Opus was just even like God tier because it would be like I didn't have to re-explain things. I didn't have to reload back files in the context window. I didn't have to say, "Oh yeah, do you remember this?" It's very occasionally I have to re-steer it if I had changed topics or went into like several bug fixes, and then I wanted to go back to the main feature or something. But it didn't really take much to get back into it. And a lot of time too, I'm working with frameworks and things I'm not really that familiar with. So I would even use an external MCP like Exa or Ref tools, which are already fairly minimal in terms of context window use. And so it's almost like it's like having like a workspace that I just kind of spread out that kept expanding, and then I could just kind of keep roaming around within that. And so it made shipping a feature faster without creating lots of chats, without creating lots of things. Because every other coding agent, you have to create new chats, launch sub agents, do these tasks to manage them, and then go back and remember what you're doing and then fix the bugs. And, so like that iteration process was kind of what I streamlined a lot with Droid. And so I've been testing other agents and other things like Cursor afterwards. It's like, okay, how much have they improved? And it seems like across the board, all these people have been taking the learnings of those blog posts and incorporating them because now a lot of these agents, even Claude Code too, can run a little bit longer with these sessions. But like you say, everyone kind of has their different caveats and things that kind of start to kind of go down these different routes. So, but yeah, I think the other thing is that like running these open models, like because I think they're using Fireworks for GLM, it's pretty cool. Like it's really fast, and you get that same harness
Hmm.
capability. It's only 0.25 tokens. So like if you're paying for $1, it only costs you like 25 cents,
Hmm.
per the tokens and stuff. So I think that's a really cool thing that they give you that much more usage out of them. And sometimes
Hmm.
they're free for a period of time as well. So
I
I,
did
I
the math
yeah.
on their subscription. Like I just basically took the cost and then all those multipliers and then checked the actual cost per million tokens with the providers, and like it really does all go down to 5%, profit for them, up to 20% profit if they're getting cheaper tokens based on like using getting a bunch of tokens, so they get a discount. So they're probably the only real subscription, like in terms of like they are making us pay what is reasonable and realistic, right? At least based on the API prices from the providers. So I respect that a lot because everyone else is kind of playing these games with subsidizing and trying to capture as much of the market as possible. Google does that with anti-gravity. Claude Code does that with giving you $2,000 of usage for much cheaper than $2,000, right? $200 a month and you get 2,500, give or take. So I have a lot of respect for that, and I just wanted to say that uh, with Pi, like Pi is very good. So Pi, Droid, and OpenCode fall into very similar categories. Like all three of them are not directly based on ink, so they don't have that flickering issue where it just goes crazy every time
Oh.
you resize the window. So they don't have that. So OpenCode doesn't have that. Droid and Pi also don't. Well, Droid does. Droid does because it is based off ink. Um,
Mm.
then they let you use local models, right? You could just use whatever model you want. Open Code is giving away like free frontier models constantly for people. I think people should try it. They give GLM 4.6 for free. They've been doing that for a year. Well, not a year, a little less. But uh, point is, I think these are like the top three. Codex is catching up. I used Codex like 2 days. I used it a lot throughout, but I used it 2 days ago, and it was just significantly better than it was. The
Yeah.
models are very much so faster. I don't know how much, but they are faster. And it got all the features now, and it's easier to use. So I would say it's like that.
Cool.
Um,
If you want to share your screen, I could pop that in if you want.
yeah, I think I have it shared, right?
Okay, cool. Yeah,
Let me double check. Do you see my screen?
I see it now. Yeah, perfect.
So here, this is like me running. I'm going to open this. So this is Minimax M2.1. So I'm running it locally. Right now, the tokens per second on generation is like 60. And this is like halfway through context. And the pre-fill is around 21,000 for cash tokens, maybe 5 or 4,000 for non-cash. And you can see here it's like doing its thing. It's running in Pi, so this is running locally. I told it to get me all of my tweets related to Droid while we were talking. And so it found all of the tweets, it quoted them, and then I asked it to get me the stats, like how many likes, reshares. So it got me the stats here.
Whoa.
So this has been very helpful. And I've been building like interesting things with it. Like there's this whole new type of UI that I've been building. Well, so the UI is just like a JavaScript, HTML website, but the way it's constructed and like its purpose is different. So I gave GLM 4.7 Flash my, I gave it the RAG for all my tweets, and then it read through all of them. So yeah, it read through all the ones related to this company called Cerebras. Let me double check if this is the one. Yeah, so it read through all the stuff made by Cerebras, and then it created a narrative, right? So this is like the narrative based on the tweets. So I took a model that was 720 gigabytes, and I got it running on 92 gigabytes. This was GLM 4.7, the larger one. So this was using a few techniques. One of them is called REAP, and then another one is just quantization. So basically, this journey, right? I didn't build any of this. I didn't design any of this. I just give it like this copy paste that I have for my brand, just like the colors and that's it. And it built all of this by itself. So 720 gigabytes to 92 gigabytes, that was the full thing. And then it took all of my tweets and it ordered them by timestamp. And then it put them together based on like how many likes that they have to make like a narrative on the 4 months that it took to get this out, right? So this was like the first tweet when I started building the machine. It took that as context, and then this is like me starting to talk about Cerebras. So I found all the stuff that like I mentioned Cerebras somewhere. GLM 4.6. Yeah, I did say it's REAP at some point.
The link Hugging
so that's
Face
how
and Cerebras. Yeah.
Yeah. Where's the site? Yeah, there you go. And so this was in October. All of these posts were about Cerebras. In December, I made a post. I was bored and I was off work, and I was like, I want to take GLM 4.7 and get it running on a MacBook. And I was like asked if people would like to donate, and a bunch of people did say that they want to donate, and but I didn't collect payments because what was the company called? Prime Intellect just gave me like $1,000 to do this on their platform. Yeah, just like within 4 hours, I posted it. I get the money. They just send me on the account, which is very kind of them.
Wow.
And then here I started the pruning, and so it was an 80-hour process, and it took all of it, got all the tweets, and like put how many likes. It's super cool, right? And this is just like a throwaway website that I used for like one call, and I didn't have to put any effort into it. And then it
How
just
did you
like
get
all
all
the
the
rabbit
tweets?
holes.
Yeah.
I didn't. Well, how did I get the tweets? Is you just go to profile. Into settings and download an archive of your data. And so almost all the websites actually let you do this, like all the social medias, I did this for Anthropic chats. I did this for all of my code, all of my AI chats as well. And It's been super helpful.
That's a good idea.
This is
So
probably
for
one of the
those who
best
are
use
wondering,
cases.
like this is a gem that he just dropped that I don't think people realize, because you don't have to have an API access to get this. This is your own data. And so you can go to the model provider or whoever you're using, whatever service. I think it's by law. They have to give you the data if you request it. And some of them have saying, okay, we'll give it to you in 30 days because we got to run some process or do some nonsense. But most of the time they get it back to you within 24 hours. From what I've seen, they just basically just give you this giant zip file, and then you can just throw that into a language model or something and have it do some analysis, right?
Yep, you could just do that. So these are the kinds of bugs that I need to keep cleaning up.
So
This
the
is
Minimax
why
model is running on your local setup.
Yes. Yeah, this is Minimax running locally. It's going all over the place. Where is
It's okay.
here?
Yeah.
There you go. So it's you see it like it thinks, it does a tool call, it thinks. So that's how the Minimax models work. They like alternate between thinking and tool calling until they get you the response, which is very useful for deep research. Like more like getting a bunch of sources as opposed to getting like one source deeply, because they can course correct when they start failing. These like interleaf thinking models, This is based off of Claude, by the way, like the
Okay.
interleaf thinking thing. They took it from Anthropic. Like this started with the Claude 4.0, and so they built it on that architecture, and it makes it really good at like solving problems. Maybe not elegantly or correctly, but it does solve the problem. You can't really hand it something and then not get a response or a solution back. You will get something working, but it's probably not what you want. I don't know if that makes sense, but this is running
Yes.
locally, and you can see the tokens per second is very like this is very
That's
fast. I would
crazy.
say
Yeah,
I
so
can't
what
read this.
what setup do I need to run Minimax? Like what specific quants and things that you would suggest to get something? Because maybe I don't have a cheap GPUs, but like let's just kind of do some back of napkin, like you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
So the model weights are 230, like so it's 230 billion parameters. So if you're running it in full precision, it's 460 or 230 for FP8. So that's just as good as for like full precision. Uh, if you're running it at 4 bits, so the whole thing can fit on 192 gigabytes, even less, 140 with full context. You can fit it on. You can fit the 4 bits, and that's like a 5% difference at most.
Mhm.
Especially with code, because what they do when they quantize is like, so you're shrinking parts of the model, but what are you actually shrinking? So you give it like a data set, and you say, hey, I want you to be good at this, and then essentially the model chops, just to make it easier to understand, you basically give it what you want it to stay good at, and then it just like reduces all the other stuff that isn't relevant.
Right.
So that's what a quantization is, and this one would fit on 110 gigabytes of memory for the weights at in 4 bit quantization.
Hmm.
For full context, add another 20. You could get like 2 bit quantizations for 60 gigabytes, or you can use a REAP, which is like where they chop the model pieces off as opposed to just shrinking them.
Hmm.
So you could get it running on as little as 60 gigabytes
Wow.
is possible. But
Or you can just use
you start,
XLabs if you have a couple machines around, um,
yeah,
and then
yeah.
spread up the
You,
inference between that. So like you can get
and
like
this
a
is a
beefy
great
Mac. Okay. Huh.
the reason this is a great model is because the active parameters is 10 billion, and so it's smart enough that it doesn't seem dumb, but it's super fast. So like not the whole model isn't activating whenever you give it a command. It's just uh, like less than 5% of it is activating.
Hmm.
So the model is very fast,
That's
and
pretty
even on
cool.
local hardware or
Yeah.
distributed, it's still fast. So you
Wow.
could see here, this is pretty good technical report, right? I just basically told it what I want, and then it did deep research. So deep research here is like really a few web searches, nothing really too serious, but it figured out like the name of my company, where I'm from, like my GitHub link. These are the projects that I used to work on. Hugging Face, like it just found a bunch of stuff about me and
Wow.
created this report, which is very coherent, and all of
Oh,
it is true, right? Like all this stuff is coming directly from a source online, and
wow.
I think that this is useful. You could also use this for scraping a
Mm,
lot. So imagine like you just want a bunch of data and you want to like get it together, and you can just tell the model, "Hey, go figure it out." Right?
yeah.
You don't have to pay for it; just go figure it out. Even GLM would be good at this.
Blue Cactus says noble work you're doing with VLLM Studio. It is much appreciated. It's so cool.
Yeah, what the thing is, I'm just building it for myself, so it kind of sucks in that like it's always a work in progress. I'm not like really stable version releasing stuff. I'm just kind of building whatever. Uh, And I think this is a huge flaw because I don't know how to get it to scale because I'm not that kind of person. Like I'm not very
Mhm.
organized. So if anybody is interested that's listening to this and wants to make this, I think it has the potential to be a top
Easy.
project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool stuff. Amazing. Well, I want to be respectful of your time because we're pretty much right at the hour mark. But for those who are listening, where can they find you, and what's like the best place that people can kind of reach you on socials or whatever, even GitHub as well? I think I dropped some GitHub links earlier. Just the
So
same. Yeah.
I am OX, so 0xSERO everywhere. Everywhere that matters. So you'll that's my username everywhere. I'm on Hugging Face. I'm on GitHub. I'm on YouTube. I do a podcast. You could find it in my Twitter. I'm mostly active on Twitter, and I think that's probably where almost everything that I do is. So reaching out to me there would be good. One thing I do want to give this before I head out, and the conversation about like OpenClaw, Moltbot, ClaudeBot.
Mm.
Uh, I have been running this. I know you're getting into it as well. And I think this is not the first. I even used something like OpenClaw 3 years ago when we still had GLM 3.5. People were making this stuff and it did work, and you could do stuff with it. But the models weren't as intelligent, and the architecture infrastructure wasn't as good as it is now. And you can practically automate anything that you have in your home. I use it for my government papers, and you can run it with local models, of course, even GLM 4.7 Flash. So I give it all of my government documents that I need signed or filled out whenever I have like some interview or something. It's just like, hey, go fill this out. You know everything about me. I use it. I have it. So recommend me like ideas. So yesterday it recommended me an idea of recording like my screen and then launching codecs on one pane and launching Claude Code on another pane, and then getting them to make like ASCII art, and then taking that and clipping it both horizontally and vertically to put it on YouTube, right? And on
That's
Twitter to get
amazing.
viewers, which is fully automated. I don't have to do anything. Like, it's a great idea. It's a very good idea. And it works. I've been testing it like over the last day or two, but I need something that's visually appealing before I
Yes.
launch it.
Let's
So
go.
I
Wow.
think that I think this is the time to tinker. This
Yes.
is the time, pay for $200 a month, pick up. If you're doing it for pure code, pick GPT. If you're doing it for like exploration and like learning, use Claude, and pay for it because it's substantially subsidized. And you are taking from them, not the other way around, I don't think. Um, and just understand, like, I really believe this with all my heart, that the future my children will have is going to be dominated not by like a human economy. It's not going to be a human economy. So if you're not good at managing robots, you're kind of screwed. You're kind of screwed. 33% of jobs in the United States are related to driving. We've had self-driving cars for the last 15 years. The only reason we don't have more is that the government is stopping this from becoming a bigger thing. Imagine
Mm,
33% of jobs in the United States just vanish, right? And this is like 50% of families, probably. So
yeah.
keep that in mind.
Facts.
Um,
Wow.
yeah, I believe that. I really do. So
And
hopefully
by
this is
playing with
useful.
these technologies, you can gain skills, which can help
Yes.
you like do better things. Then you can probably
Yes.
become an operator of them and lease
Yes.
several of them. And then now you have your own autonomous fleet to do like really niche specific tasks that people will pay you even more money for, that people aren't really wanting to go deep on. But maybe you have some
Yeah.
level of expertise. But I think I like this note about like leveling yourself up. Come here to tinker, come here to build. This is the right time to do that. It doesn't have to be local. It could be even paying, but right now there's more benefits for us as far as the stuff that we get with these frontier labs. But it's also not bad to also take a look at some of these other options, local AI.
Yeah.
What I think,
Oh, I couldn't. You
yeah,
couldn't blind test me, except GPT. I think GPT is actually the most intelligent model that I've ever interacted with. Except GPT, like it is very good at doing super deep research and then being super precise with what it changes, which is sorely needed because there's so much slop. But
hmm,
besides GPT, like you could blind test me between Kimi and Claude
oh,
Opus and
oh,
the latest Kimi, and I wouldn't really be able to tell 95% of the time. And that 5% of the time where I could tell, like maybe that's the 5% that I should be learning instead of just saying, hey, go fix this, make no mistakes. One other thing, just like one last thing that I think is important, and this is a thesis of mine, is that like we are moving into an economy where everything is worthless, right? You can just produce anything extremely quickly, at least digitally. So the most important thing is distribution. How do you get whatever it is that you're building in front of other people? And like there is a huge hole where a bunch of AIs on social media are just fucking running amok and making everything like not good. So if you make content, even if it's bad, you're like, one, you're helping make the like the internet more human, and then two is you solve distribution over time. And this is going to be the biggest problem because anything that you can make, somebody with like a following of 10,000 people will be able to copy and just go and sell, right?
yes.
Important to know.
That's a really interesting note, and I like that gets people thinking about that. And it doesn't take much, even just forming your own local communities to get people to come together. I'm really about this type of movement of like in person, online, live streaming is a really big deal for me, and it's funny because I made a big bet on it a little bit, and I was like, Well, it's just kind of way I naturally work. Editing videos takes a little while and so forth, but I like to just be real with everyone. So I appreciate everyone um, who has been able to stop by. I appreciate all the comments. This is, man, I wish this whole conversation was about distribution. We could probably get into it the next episode. Drop what you want to see next for sure. I think that we can kind of start talking about it. But yeah, communities like this are awesome, and obviously share this with other friends and people who are on a similar wavelength. I found Zero just through other friends on X, right? I was like, dude, this guy is posting some solid stuff. And so it's kind of cool. Like mutual friends, you start to follow people, and everyone kind of starts to get into different things, and it's cool because Zero is Zero, and I who I am, and we can kind of meet in the middle. It's like, dude, like, what are you cooking, bro? Like, you got some cool stuff, and we could just share freely like this live and in person. And I appreciate everyone who's been able to do this. Also, Alex Finn in the building. If you haven't heard, two of my favorite content
Oh,
creators.
thanks.
Awesome collab. This guy is a
I really
legend.
have to bounce. My
Yeah,
my daughter is asking, but it was great talking to you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my rambling. See
awesome.
you soon, hopefully.
Peace out, y'all. Take it easy.